Yeah, hi Edith. Hi Doc.
Hi, Wairoto, how are you?
Fine, fine. I've remembered.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I may need to make a small announcement.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Njuguna, our previous chair, he suggested that it is good we have photos of the psychiatrists on our website, so that hii maneno ya kukaa kuuliza mtu ako wapi, See the way group people keep asking who is in Kisii, who is where. So you're suggesting if we can have that in our website, maybe people can send their photos.
Do you want to announce that?
Yes.
You want to announce that, or you want me to announce?
Yeah, even I can announce, or Chitai Chitai will be in.
Yes.
Is he a panelist? Hello.
You know, I had asked Levy that it would be a good idea to send the entire neck, the entire neck to be panelists, but I'm not sure he was able to do that. Alinitisha email ya Prof. Njenga. Can you hear me?
Hello? Yes, sir.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, now concerning like creating the whole neck to be like a panelist.
Panelist.
Yeah, I didn't manage to get the email to get those emails because you shared with me around 3 emails, just 3 of them.
So I didn't give you all the emails.
Yes, but if I can have them, maybe I might share the same. I can be able to share the same.
Yeah, because we only talked about the 3, but I can see other people are joining in, so we need to start the meeting, isn't it? Dr. Frank Njenga is here.
Yes.
Wairoto can send the link of Chitai, the email of Chitai.
Okay.
But the good thing, everyone, the way it is made, see, the other panelists, the other people can also join, but they can't talk.
Yeah. We already have like around 6 attendees who have already joined.
Okay.
Yeah. But they are all on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, unless maybe you just want to chat with them.
No. Let's wait for, if you can send Chitai, if you can get Chitai's email, then make him a panelist. Let me send you.
Okay, kindly share.
Oh my God.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Prof, how are you?
Hello, hello, hello.
Edith, you're appearing twice.
It's backup. You see, the one that doesn't have audio, just in case of anything. Internet.
Yeah. Learning in the Zoom era.
I'm telling you. Dr. How much time do you want us to present for? Dr. Koba, I'm asking you.
So the whole meeting, we hope, can just be exactly 1 hour.
Oh, dear. Okay.
Yeah, so we have 1 hour. So if we do 30 minutes presentation, 20 minutes of discussions with Atwoli, then we can have.
Okay, so I'll try and be quick.
I feel like if you do 30 minutes, Prof will have some comments to make, then a few questions, hoping that there will be questions. Then we'll be good to go.
Okay.
Then we have 1 hour.
Sawa.
I think that works.
Okay.
And we look. Yeah.
All right, we'll aim to do that.
Great.
Well, you're ready?
Yeah.
It's now 7 o'clock. I think we just want to give it a few minutes as people log in and settle down so that we can start together. I know we had a number of people who had registered, so people will be logging in. So maybe we can give it another minute, then we can just start.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, I would like to thank you for creating time to be with us this evening. As Kenya Psychiatric Association, we thank God that we are here 2021. We believe that everyone closed well. That's why we are here. And we are wishing all of us a happy new year. And from the CPD desk, we are hoping that this is a good beginning, that going forward, we'll be able to meet every month. And the hope is that you're comfortable wherever you are, because guys, this evening we have great speakers. You know, I was thinking about the introductions that I tried to make for the speakers tonight. And I realized that I need probably 2 hours and we have 1 hour meeting. So I decided that I would not go into the details of introducing our speakers tonight, but instead, I know all of us, and know Dr. Frank Njenga, and I don't know what to call him, the father of psychiatry. He has been practicing psychiatry before I was born. How do I even begin to introduce him? And then there's Professor Lukoya Atwoli, again, a scholar, dean, many things. We again spend a lot of time trying to describe who they are. But the beauty is, this is Kenya Psychiatric Association. They are part of us, so we know them very well. And I believe that everyone, like me, is excited to listen to these two gentlemen tell us about purpose. You realize sometimes for some of us, we keep moving like the robots, and we keep going. And if someone asked you, and I remember Professor Njenga one time asking me in a meeting, asking you a group of people, where are you going? A very tough question. I am hoping you'll ask all of us that same question. And I realized I actually probably don't know for sure where I'm going. And that's the reason why we decided to start 2021 with trying to focus about the reason why we are here. And we really look forward to these exciting discussions. But before we invite our speakers to share with us what they got, we have the president of Kenya Psychiatric Association, Dr. Chitai Murabula, and I'd like him to welcome members into the new year and make a comment for a minute, after which then we will start listening about purpose, living a purpose-driven life. Dr. Chitai, you there?
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Koba, for that welcome. And since today we will want to spend the next 1 hour listening to our senior colleagues, Dr. Frank Njenga and Professor Lukoya Toli, my comments will be extremely brief. And the first thing I will say is that I want to welcome all members to our very first CME of 2021. And we realized that 2020 was a difficult year for everybody. And therefore, we would like to also spare a moment and just think about those who have gone through many, many challenges, including the COVID-19, including political turmoil in different parts of the world. Some of these tragedies really should make us think deeply about the human society and what can be our contribution in reducing human pain and suffering, in our own society, but also, make us think deeply about why some of these tragedies do occur, and sometimes I think about it, and it's not. Sometimes we remove ourselves from the scene of such tragedies, but truly, this should also remind us that that a lot of the things we take for granted, and even including civilization in general, can be very fragile, and within a moment, you can find societies regressing. So I also want to just welcome those who are joining and they're not psychiatrists. We had a good discussion with Koba earlier, and one of the discussions we are having is about how to spread the knowledge even outside the psychiatric community. And so we are happy if anyone has joined and they're not psychiatrists, feel very much welcome and feel free to participate. And lastly, I'd just like to thank the Education Research and Mentorship Committee led by Dr. Koba for putting this together. And most importantly, then our panel, whom we look forward to listening to this evening. Thank you, Dr. Koba. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chitai. And because we said we do not want to waste a minute of this evening discussing too much about introduction, I'd like to invite Dr. Frank Njenga to start sharing his slides and start speaking to us. The one thing that I remember about Dr. Frank Njenga, I was told that when I was very, very young, that he's a psychiatrist who sees even the president, that the people, if we had any important person who didn't be seen. So he's the psychiatrist, if you can put it that way. And I knew when I was growing up that if I want to become a psychiatrist, that Frank Njenga is the person to be like. And truly, the short time I have practiced psychiatry, I have not been disappointed. Every time he starts to share his wisdom, I'm always awed. And I want to invite Dr. Frank Njenga to continue sharing with us the wisdom, as he has always shared, to start us off 2021. Dr. Frank Njenga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Edith. I thank you, all the participants. I thank you very, very much. I hope we have a good evening. Actually, when I was being introduced as whatever Edith said about my being an old man, I'm happy to announce that I've actually been a member of the Royal College now for 41 years, meaning that I've been conferred the position of Fellow Emeritus in the Royal College of Psychiatrists, whatever that means. Actually, what it means is that I don't have to pay any more fees and I enjoy all the benefits. So I don't know how important that is. Now, this webinar was actually in a way provoked by Edith Koba herself, when in a previous webinar, there was a question, this whole question of the purpose of life and why we live and what we do and why we do it, with who we do it. Because it's been noticed over time that a number of us, all of us, have a tendency to just get up and go work and not have the time or energy or inclination to establish what it is that that derives them. So I'm not sure why Edith thought that I would be the appropriate person to do this, but I accepted the challenge. I was having an offline conversation earlier with Professor Atuole, and we have agreed that the objective of this webinar today is not to answer questions, because I think that we'll have to leave to people who are wiser and more experienced than ourselves, but to raise issues for discussion, because it's only if we can raise and discuss issues openly in the old sense of a symposium. I think that will have been enough. If at the end of this evening, people go home saying, I'm not sure I agreed with what Mzee said. My view on what he said is this, that, and the other one. And the other person says, I disagree with you also because this, that, and the other reason. So really, this very specific deliverable is to provoke thought and thinking rather than to answer questions for who humanity has addressed over the years with almost diminishing answers. So a good place to start, Grace, next slide, please, is to try and understand the existential view of our life and being. And the study of existentialism really is simply an examination of human existence and why we exist and what a meaningful life may or may not be. And from this perspective, really, there are those who believe on the absurdity of life. Because even the Bible, actually, I think it's the book of Ecclesiastes, talks about at the end of the day, really, it's all folly. It's also possible to hold the view that each one of us, and not society, and not religion, and not your sister, not your mother, are responsible for giving meaning and to your life and your authenticity, meaning that you own yourself and you own the meaning of life for yourself, meaning that actually does, in a way, empower you. And then there's a school, there's a so-called school of existential nihilism, a well-respected school that says, really, life has no intrinsic value, meaning or value. Life is just life, and it has no purpose beyond just being life. Next slide. To kind of counteract that level of thinking, we have Christians, we have Muslims, we have Buddhists, who really have very clear views of the reason they exist. In a very summarized form, Christians seek divine salvation and seek to do the will of God, their creator. In a similar way, the Muslims seek to God's purpose. Buddhists actually have a slightly different approach to this. You're required to escape this thing called samsara and achieve nirvana. And samsara is this whole cycle of death and rebirth. But that's an alternative way of thinking about why we exist. And then more recently, we have come across the Japanese. And I really like what they say. I mean, by way of summary, that happiness is being always busy, and whatever you do, do not retire. I can see some of you laughing and thinking that is a philosophy that Mzee tends to follow. Next slide, please. So, what does it mean to connect with purpose? There's a very interesting write-up on a book called The Green Giants that argues from observations of the Fortune 500 companies listed that really, if you want to be a successful enterprise, you must seek a purpose for your existence, and I'll be showing a little bit about that. And once you pursue purpose, profits will come chasing after you. In your case, in my case, this theory suggests that if the purpose for which we go to work every day is to see 40 or 50 patients so that we become exceedingly rich, then truly, by the time you're 60 or 70, you will be very, very, very rich, but a complete and total empty shell without a purpose. In other words, really, it is suggested here that your life must have greater meaning than to have a huge bank balance. And this is what is called the purpose paradox. The purpose paradox gets us to see that actually, once you have found your purpose and you're chasing your purpose, then richness and wealth and even happiness will come following you. I'd like to hear the views of those who are here. And as I say, I'll be giving you one or two examples to illustrate this, mainly from Fortune 500 companies that have done exceedingly well, and also men and women who have done very well in life. So what is purpose? Because really this is a conversation about purpose. Well, I mean, it's clear. It's a goal or an intention. It's an object towards which we strive. Yeah, so, and if you know that you have a purpose, then you make it, this is my suggestion this evening, that you make your mission to get this world to be a better place, and then your bank balance will become fat. If you go the other way around, looking for a fat bank account without a purpose, then you are doomed to failure. So by way of conclusion, I will be concluding to say that business that is ignited by purpose beyond profits outperforms the companies that go to the marketplace to become rich. And the examples that now follow are really, in some ways, giants. Next slide, Grace. If you look at Tesla, for example, and we know Elon Musk now has overtaken everybody else and is worth in excess of 20 trillion shillings. These are sums that governments all over the world shudder to think about. He didn't set up to become the richest man in the world. He has become the richest man, this is the argument, with the mission, very simple. In fact, his mission was an environmental one. He set out to expedite the move from a mine and burn hydrocarbon economy towards solar electricity, so that we can reduce carbon emissions. So that every day when he wakes up, every day from what he does, different from that objective that things might appear, that is what drives Tesla. If you look at Nike have a very interesting driving philosophy. Nike started off with the aspiration, which was to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. Now listen to what then they say. If you have a body, you are an athlete, meaning that their market is everybody who is alive, not just the Kipchoges, but anybody who can get up and walk. Many people think that Unilever, for example, set up to create Kimbo, Omo, and all those things. If you read around the philosophy behind Unilever, the philosophy and the reason they appear in the Fortune 500 is because they set up business with the philosophy of creating a better everyday life for the many. Again, meaning that the entire world, anybody who eats any kind of food and has any kind of shower is their customer, and the intention is to make them have a better life every single day. When we at Chiromo Lane Medical Center set off working together with Okonjo Owiti and others, we worked under the tagline of recovery in dignity. And there's a very good reason why that was our tagline. It's because we noticed that during our training and even after we graduated, the one thing that was consistently taken away from our patients was dignity. They were treated in very dark back rooms without air. And we decided that we would, whatever we do in our lives, go in the direction of providing a dignified environment for the people we work with or for. And I don't know if this will be believed. If it's not believed, that's also okay. But our mission as a group is to provide a dignified, quality mental health care in the continent of Africa. And I can give you testimony that because we live this mission, often profits tend to follow. And my argument this evening is that we should borrow from that and actually make it our mission to find purpose in serving, and then we'll be followed by profit and inshallah happiness. Then, of course, there are all sorts of thoughts. And in a way, this is what I was saying. Every person in this meeting today will have their own thought as to what purpose is or ought to be. Albert Einstein held the view that if you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal, not to people or things. Millions are people who look for happiness by getting quarter-acre plots in Rwai and other places. Others go looking for happiness by getting the biggest motor car or living in the... Einstein says that you need to find a goal, tie yourself to it, and following it. Mark Zuckerberg holds a view, and this is what he says, I don't know whether it's true or not, that he asks himself this question every day that he gets up. Am I doing the most important thing I could be doing? Or am I just tangering and wasting my time? I suspect there are people who at this point in this webinar are wondering, so now what is this thing Mzee is talking about? What are goals? Well, goals are roadmaps to a destination. And the old song says, if you don't have a roadmap, any place you get to is your destination. And the reality again is, destiny is not a matter of chance. You don't just go guessing. Really, you have to go for it. You have to think around it. And there we are. Next slide. Now, Edith Kwoba, bless you, remembers this. I'm a teacher, and one of the strengths of a teacher is to keep repeating himself, because then people remember what he is saying. And this is what Edith was talking about. Really, we need to ask ourselves these questions. And really, if you don't ask yourself these questions, then you and the baboon that lives in your neighborhood are really very similar in attitude to life. Because you need to know what is the purpose of living? Why am I here? Why is it that every morning I wake up, I shower, I then go and do this thing called work? And where am I going? Am I going to Muranga? Am I going to Kitale? Am I going to, what is, and really, as Edith said quite rightly, when I posed this question in a training forum in Eldoret, I think a year or two ago, the participants shocked themselves by being unable to answer the question, where are you going? They get up every morning, they're always in a rush, they get into their cars, they get into their offices, and yet they really have no idea, they have no roadmap. And then why are you going there? I mean, if you're going somewhere and somebody asks, why are you going there? You really need to know why. I mean, I'm going to get some tomatoes, I'm going to get some oranges, I'm going to meet, you really need to know why you're going there. And then, of course, then this is a big question. How are you going there? Are you going there by matatu? Are you walking there? Are you running? Are you flying there? To what extent are you equipped to embark on the journey that you now purport to be undergoing? This will save many people a lot of who are you going there with? Are you going alone? Are you taking your mother? Are you taking your priest? Are you taking your, who is telling you, if anybody, that actually we are moving too slowly or moving too quickly or carelessly, or we have moved the roadmap? And critically, and this is the last bullet point here, is how will you know when you get there? When your bank account reflects 182 million shillings, and you have two big houses, one in your rural village where you'll be buried when you die, and another one in Nairobi, and your children have finished university, and your wife appears happy in her ways, is that really where you wanted to go to? And why did you want to go there? Next slide. So those questions, I like, really, if you can ask yourselves all those questions. If you don't get answers immediately, that's because you're thinking. If you get answers immediately, try and expend some more thought on those questions, because that is really the substance of my presentation this evening. So why am I suggesting that it is important that you set goals? It's because when you set a very specific goal, then you have feedback that really you wanted to go to Mombasa, but actually you are now headed towards Narok. You might still get there, but it's going to be a tricky thing. It also enables you to track your progress, because you can tell that I had said that where I want to get to is this particular destination. It also helps you to formally, I don't know how many of us here present are familiar with the process of strategic planning. We do it all the time. We do it for our universities, we do it for our schools, we do it for our companies, we do it for industry, we do it. But very few people look at their lives and themselves as you look at an institution and do a proper SWOT analysis, just to check on your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and so on, and actually say, this destination, this goal I'm setting for myself is incongruous with the skill set that they have. And I would propose to you that if you set goals that are value-led, it is possible that you could go on in the direction of happiness. But most crucially, the reason you should set goals is you will know two things. One, you will know when you get to your destination. And secondly, and opposite to that, you will know when you miss them. So now the big question is, what type of goals are there? In other words, are there different types of goals? And I really will move fairly quickly here, because there are basically two types of goals. There are those goals that we describe as intrinsic, goals that are to do with emotional intimacy, things that are to do with your personal growth and helping others. And I'll be talking a little bit more about helping others. Goals that are related to greater happiness and self-actualization and vitality and creativity. In other words, what is it that you can or ought to do to get into a place where you achieve self-actualization and creativity in the way that Maslow told us all those many years ago. And then, of course, there are the extrinsic goals that are defined. In some cultures, a goal is to have 7 wives, preferably all of them exceedingly fat and slow, with 28 children. That defines a successful person. In other cultures, it's the attainment of 6 degrees, preferably in diverse fields. For others, is to have a job that has, I'm sure you understand exactly what I am saying. And really, those goals that are to do with material things that tell us that you are considered successful because of the number of houses that you have, or the number of big, expensive cars that you have. Those are extrinsic goals that really have nothing to do with how you feel. I mean, there are people totally, almost pathologically preoccupied with their physical appearances, status symbols all over the place. And yet these are real goals that certain people in our society follow. I've just mentioned Maslow. I think everybody in this webinar is aware of the state of self-actualization, which in a way is what will set you apart in some ways from your cat or dog. Next slide, please. So how do you go about goal setting? And I really want to emphasize and re-emphasize what I said at the beginning. I am not here to give you answers. I am not here to give you a formula. I'm not here to give you a recipe. I am here preferably to provoke some thought. Some people will agree with me, others will disagree with me. And if that happens, I will be a very happy old man. So whatever goal you set for yourself has to have a very concrete endpoint that tells you, this is now Mombasa, you have arrived. The other thing about setting goals is that it's helpful if you work towards a goal. I want to walk towards the goal that makes me healthier than I am today. When I'm healthy, I will achieve that by being able to do this on the treadmill. My blood pressure will be like this. My weight will be like this. The parameters around which good health are, in other words, something that you walk towards, rather than I will walk away. I will walk towards not having the pain of withdrawal from alcohol. That's advice that we often get. The other thing, and this I think a few people will disagree with me, is that whatever goal you set to yourself, it must be realistic. I'm an old man now, and it will be silly for me to try and run the marathon, because whereas I could have run it 50 years ago, today is perhaps not likely. However, that doesn't mean that the goal I set must also be challenging. It cannot be the case that I will set myself a goal of walking only for 20 minutes or 10 minutes every day and consider a challenging goal. Is not. But crucially, and this is a thing well embedded in general psychology, is that it is foolish to set up goals that are not achievable. They must be achievable, otherwise you become demoralized. And then, obvious things, who are you going to work with, friends, family, or whatever it is. And then it's also important, what are these goals about? Is it my career? Am I saying that by the age of 45, I want to be whatever? Am I saying that the quality of the relationship between my spouse and my children? Am I talking about the physical? Am I talking about social? So it's helpful to break down the list of the goals that you are setting for yourself. Next slide, please. Now, we've talked about this because what then happens is that when life becomes very difficult and complicated, I think we're entitled, indeed almost required, to go and look for explanation. And Christians have their own ways. Next slide, please. Muslims have their own ways, and I'm not going to argue as to whether they are good or bad. All I'm going to say is that some people find solace in whatever religious belief that they have. Now, next slide. What I now have are really very, very, very serious questions about the whole generality of purpose. In other words, I think it's important to try and understand whether, if you think about evolution, and in particular Darwinian thinking, how does that link or not link with purpose in life? In other words, what are the roots of morality? Is it the holy book or holy books? Do we have to believe in God to be good and moral and to have a purpose? If the answer is no, then what job does God have? In other words, if we don't need God to be a good person with a purpose, does he have a job? This is not my question, incidentally. This is a question that has occupied and preoccupied philosophers and wise men over the years. Coming back to good old Einstein, he held the view that man is here on earth for the sake of other men, and in particular, for those people who give him smile and happiness. In other words, I exist, ladies and gentlemen, because you give me and I give you smiles and happiness. Others say, and we have talked about the nihilistic positions, that we came from nothing and we will go back into nothing. The Latin word there is ex nihil nihil tuli. Out of nothing will come nothing. So this is a Chinese guy, forget his name. He concluded after this whole conversation that really the only reason we live is so that you can die. Richard Dawkins, a very interesting chap, who was a professor of public understanding of science at Oxford, born right here in Nairobi in 1941, I think it was, wrote an incredibly interesting book, two books actually, one on the delusion, God's delusion, and the second one, which is relevant to our conversation today, in the title of The Selfish Gene, arguing that it's the genes that control whether we survive, not the whole organism. No time to go into that incredibly interesting conversations. We've kind of covered this when you looked at the existential philosophies. And, you know, we really have said there's neither happiness, there is no meaning in life. Life is just folly. And really, according to Richard Dawkins, in his book, The Selfish View, that actually the gene itself is so selfish that it actually recognizes that it's possible to perpetuate itself by being moral, by being decent, by being empathic, by being helpful to other people. And that is the way, that is the only reason. In other words, we are all those nice things because our genes are so incredibly selfish and knowledgeable. And that, according to Dawkins, is the reason we are total strangers. We sent money to boys and girls we don't know. The Good Samaritan helped that guy who had been beaten in the street there. He didn't expect him to do anything. That, according to Dawkins, is really the explanation. It's all deeply in our genes, and we don't need policemen by way of the Quran, the Bible, or whatever, Buddha. So the conclusion is that really, if you can, you really ought to be sufficiently selfish to help other people. And the argument continues on altruism and related matter. And we conclude that the bee is not that it loves flowers, is that it needs nectar. And the flower is not because it loves the bee, it is because the bee will help it in pollination. The blacksmith needs nyama, so he makes the spear, and the hunter goes and brings him meat, and so on and so forth. Next slide. And there's a lot of theory around why we are moral, why we help people, why we have a purpose, but I don't think we have time or inclination. A very interesting bird, the Arabian bird, it's called the Arabian bubbler. It really tells us why Kinamanu Chandaria and all these philanthropists, Bill Gates and so on, keep giving. It's actually their way of expressing their dominance over ourselves. And again, if you remember, next slide, please. The primitive man was xenophobic, completely xenophobic. He didn't need to relate to people across the ridge on the other side. His business was only to look after his wife and his children and perhaps his tribesmen and nobody else. But now necessity has brought us into the street, into the cities, and we really need to get on with other people. So coming to an end, ladies and gentlemen, why do we do good? Why do we have innate in ourselves to be good? Is it because the Bible and the Quran say so? Is it because we have these very selfish genes? Is it because we fear God? Is it because although we don't know whether he's there or not, we are afraid that this God might be watching? Is it a Darwinian imperative? So, which raises an interesting question. Is there any evidence that people who go to church more, next slide please, than those who don't go, have less problems of this earth, as they are called? In America, for example, if you look at cities where church going and Christianity are very, very high, it's exactly in those places that you find high rates of homicides, high mortality, STDs, teen pregnancies, and other things of this earth. Next slide, please. So your purpose, your intention to do good, your morality, according to Immanuel Kant, is really, morality is a duty for duty's sake. You do not need to have a policeman telling you what to do for you to be good for the reasons that I have said. I'm coming to an end. I'm under pressure for time, but next slide. Does money really buy you happiness? Should we get up every day and go chasing this almighty big dollar? A number of studies from Princeton says all you need is $75,000. The Harvard guys say $105,000. And the reason, very interesting, there's fairly good agreement about this one. It's not the amount of money, it's the opportunities and choices that actually lead on to happiness. A huge body of knowledge around how money, the route through which money makes you feel a little bit happy. The other interesting thing is that money actually makes you happy if you make it yourself. If you inherit it from your uncle, then the level of your happiness is not as good as if you make it yourself. And finally, very, very interesting, when you give it away, like Bill Gates and the other philanthropists, it makes you happier. I told you I was going to provoke thought. These are the things that unite billionaires. So if you want to be a billionaire, get up before 5, go run, keep healthy, eat, be disciplined, contemplate, read a lot. And then that and then the position of family is at the center. Now, we've recently finished doing the mental health task force report. We have recommended there that we be given the opportunity to put in place a national happiness evaluation system. In part, and I'm sure you've seen all this, there is a kind of relationship at the national level between some wealth, as in Scandinavia, and some happiness. So by conclusions, those are the very, very few things that I would like to claim I have seen. And we'll start with the last bullet point. I'm not going to go through all of them. I want you to read them. One of the big things, and I would like to really emphasize this, is that you must plan your exit from the world stage, an exit that is marked with dignity, and an exit that is done at your own timing. Time without number. Old men and women keep fighting to remain to be dean, keep fighting to be presidents like in Uganda, keep fighting. Complete nonsense. All of us will exit. The only thing that we can determine is when and how. And whatever else you do, ladies and gentlemen, plan your exit from the world stage and ensure that it is marked with dignity, that it's done on your time. And with those words, goodbye.
Oh, wow. I told
That's
you
where
guys, I have never been disappointed listening to Frank Njenga. It's always exciting. Actually, I wish we had like a half-day workshop to keep listening to this, but I hope everyone is reminded that mission leads. I think that for me is the main thing. Mission leads, everything else follow. I am not going to say that I probably have not been working towards being a billionaire, but I'm going to start waking up at 5 a.m. as has been indicated. Thank you so much, Dr. Frank Njenga. It's always amazing. Your wisdom is awesome, and we look forward to further discussions. Now, to continue with that discussion is another gentleman that, again, I would not want to start describing. The only thing I want to say about him is that he's my friend and he's my mentor. I thank you, Professor Lukoya Tuoli, for what you have been, and to us and to many other people. And today we said we are not discussing how many papers you've done and the positions you hold because there are many. We want to hear wisdom about purpose in life. Professor Lukoya Tuoli, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Edith. There are two reasons that I would have difficulty speaking this evening. And one is that I am in awe whenever I contemplate what you, Edith, have achieved and continue to achieve from the time when we started a long time ago. So that gives me a sense of satisfaction and gratitude that you took this baton and you ran with it very well. So this, seeing you do all this work and achieve all the things you're achieving is one of those things that somebody can say is a mission that a person like myself set for himself and is achieving. But the second reason why I would be speechless today is having to speak after such a great speaker as Frank Njenga, who from the time I came into the psychiatric fraternity has been imparting words of wisdom, and he still does today. And I'm proud to say that today I can count him among my friends and among the people that I always throw ideas at and learn something new every day. Now, Frank started by saying that he's been a member of the Royal College of Psychiatrists for 41 years until they have reached a place where they're telling him they don't want his money and they're practically booting him out of certain things in the college. I mark my 45th birthday this year. So that means he joined the Royal College of Psychiatrists when I was 4 or 5 years old. And so you can see the generational differences as they emerge. And I know there are people who are entering this profession who are 10, 15 years younger than me. And so that is another thing about the cycle of life. To exemplify what Frank has presented so cleverly and with wisdom that I cannot match, I'll just give you examples from my own short experience. And I'm very happy to say that some of the things that he has said then apply to me. So when I was very young, I noticed something about me. I noticed that I used to get very, very frustrated when people who are around me would do things that would end up harming themselves. So self-injurious things, things that didn't look like they were beneficial to them, and that you could almost tell that they were going to harm themselves. And I would get frustrated when I would see people planning and plotting and organizing to do things that would harm other people just because they could. And I would get frustrated when I would see people acting without thinking about the consequences of their actions. And over time, I found that I would spend a lot of time thinking through things and became very methodical. And when I learned mathematics, I became relatively, mathematical. So I would do a lot of calculations before I made decisions. And at a time, I reached a place where I got scared of getting to old age and not being able to answer two questions from a child when I am slightly older than Frank is today. And the two questions that I was scared that I would not be able to answer were, where were you when this was happening, especially when bad things were happening? And the second question is, what did you do about it? And thinking deeply about these two questions helped me to frame where I wanted my life to go at a very young age. I determined that I would do everything I can do in order to influence people so that they gain more insight into the things that they are doing, with a goal that everything that they do should be geared towards improving the lot of others and of themselves. So if I could influence people to think like that, then I thought when I am asked those two questions, I would say exactly where I was and what I did to influence people to do things differently, even if I failed. As a result of that, very early in life, I fashioned my life around 4 Ps, and later 5th P joined this constellation. And the first one was poetry. I found that poetry moved people emotionally. And I got very involved in poetry, and I started writing and reading a lot of poetry. And I found a lot of order and method in poetry. And the second P was prose. So I found that not everybody had a taste for poetry. So it doesn't matter how colorful the poetry is that you write, but people want to read sometimes, they want to just read verse. And the third one was philosophy. It helped to frame how people think, and that is the only way that you could learn how to influence people and how people think. And the fourth one, which I found necessary, almost like a necessary evil, was politics, which is how people are organized in society in order to achieve certain goals. The 5th P came as a natural consequence of this when I went into medical school and discovered that there was something called psychiatry that deals with all of these things and many more. So having framed things like that, I think you will agree that having a frame like that helps me every day in the morning when I wake up. I ask myself, if something like this is happening now, and 20 years from now or 50 years from now, that young child asks me those two questions, how will I answer? And then I go ahead and plan and organize myself in a way that I'll be able to answer that question. I will venture to say that based on Frank's presentation, the voice of that young child, many of us have framed it in a way that makes sense to them. And I would venture that that voice exists in each of our minds. Some have named that voice God. Some have named that voice Nirvana. Some have found philosophical explanations for that voice. But that voice helps to frame purpose. And the reason I say that is that I agree with two things, again, that Frank has said. In the beginning, as he described existential philosophy, where he said, life has no extrinsic meaning. I mean, objectively, if you look at living things doing their thing, there is no pattern, there is no system, there is no meaning. And then secondly, he spoke about the genes and what Richard Dawkins proposed as the selfish gene. And Richard Dawkins' theory is deep in the sense that he says we as human beings and as living things in general exist to fulfill the destiny of the genes that we carry. And the primary destiny of the genes that we carry is to be propagated into the next generation. And so we act in order to increase chances of certain constellations of genes to move to the next generations. That still speaks to the objective meaningless of life as we know it, but meaningfulness of life at the genetic level. And therefore, at the level of humans like ourselves, we find that we have to create meaning. We have to design meaning and imbue meaning into our lives. And this is where purpose comes in. This is where mission, as Edith has said, comes in. And this is where the voice of that small child who will meet me when I'm 70, 80, or 100 and ask me those two questions, that is where that voice exists. And that is what all of us design our lives to be able to answer. Thank you very much. And I look forward to a bit of a discussion, although time keeps running away from us. Thank you, Edith.
Wow, thank you so much, Prof. Again, wisdom. I told you guys that this is the night, and how well would we start a year? But by listening to such wisdom so that we can focus, finding meaning. And I'm hoping that as we sit in here, we are thinking about our own lives, because that's really what it is about. Today, we are not making it very academic. We want to make sure that as we start, we are asking ourselves, what are we about? And back to Prof's question, does your life have meaning? What is it? What is that voice saying? Very, very important to be speaking. What happens when you are 40 or going to 40 and you haven't found purpose? How can you be helped? How do you, like, it's halfway through life and you haven't figured out what you're meant to be? How do you help such a person? And I'd also like Dr. Frank Njenga to also chip in, because I find people feeling like, I don't know what I am doing. How do you help such people at this point?
Is that to me, Edith?
That is to both of you. So we can start with Dr. Frank Njenga, then Professor Lukoya Tuoli. I'm 40 and I have no idea what I am here, where I'm going.
When I came back from the UK in the very early 80s, I think it was 80, yeah, whatever, 80s, I appeared on TV, as I sometimes did and do. And the interviewer kind of led me to the question you're asking now. And my answer to that question, which attracted a great deal of wrath from my contemporary, was simply this. And I really looked at the camera and I said, if you have not made it by the time you're 40, you're doomed. You are finished. And all my friends and classmates and everybody else, I was not 40 yet, but that's fine also. I think a slight modification that would have made more sense then would have been, if you don't know where you're going. In other words, if you have no goals in life by the time you're 40, you have a bit of a problem. So you don't have to have reached those goals or defined purpose, but really by the time you're 40, all those questions that we have asked must have found a measure of interrogation by yourself in a formal manner. So my view is that we are provoking this thinking so that people who are currently under 40 can take this coming weekend off to interrogate some of the questions so that they can gear themselves towards finding a purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Frank. And as Professor Lukoya Tuoli gives his opinion, I'd like to encourage all of us, if you have any question for our wise speakers, kindly put it on chat so that we can share with them. Professor Lukoya.
Thank you very much. So I come from the school of thought that once you start looking for meaning and set certain things in your life and say, so in the general meaningless of life, this is what I am here to do. My view is that you can find the answer to that question at any age. It is obviously better to find it earlier, because then you have a longer life to pursue your dream, to pursue your vision, and to pursue your goals. But it doesn't mean that by the time you are 40, it is not clear to you that then there is nothing more that you can do. To me, it means that sometimes if you're still questioning by the time you're 40, you're not sure about things by the time you're 40, perhaps that is your role. And you will discover that your role is to be in a space where you keep asking questions and other people pick from your questions and learn something and start asking themselves the same questions. So it doesn't have to be a grand vision. It doesn't have to be a grand dream that I want to go and change the entire world and make them do my will. It can be something small, something as small as where I come from, people did not have clean, potable drinking water and people would die of diarrhea. And I hope that by the time I'm done in this world, nobody dies of diarrhea because of drinking this kind of water. And you work towards that and you find that the world opens in front of you, gives you opportunities to do exactly that.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I continue to see the chat. Thank you guys for the chat that you're sharing. And there's a Hutaifa Mohammed who's shared quite some discussion there. And it's what he says is worth noting that life has personal meaning for everyone. And I think that's true. And that has been alluded to by our speakers. And that we know that what we know about life is very little and we live to learn every day. They say it's never too late to learn. Thank you again. And again, we appreciate the presence of people like Professor Lukoya, Professor Benson Gakinya, who is listening to us. We appreciate that you're joining in and everyone who shared their thoughts. And there's a question that I hope Dr. Frank Njenga will be asking, will be answering first, is whether he will share his slides. I also want those slides. They really are awesome. I hope you will be willing to share with us. But for starting with Dr. Frank Njenga and back to Lukoya at all is, what are these resources that we can use? I know many of us are wondering, okay, we should have purposes too, but what are some of these resources we could begin to maybe refer to as we define our purposes in life? We can start with Dr. Frank Njenga.
I started off by saying that I don't have, it's not like cooking. It's not something you do in a recipe that says this much salt and then a little bit of pepper and then you will achieve happiness and you'll be able to identify. I actually don't think it's like that. I think it's actually much simpler and basic. The first thing I would like to suggest is, and I think Lukoya has alluded to this one a little bit, by the grace of God, whoever it is that created you, we are all different. And I think if you set it as your purpose to lead the life of Lukoya Tuole, I can promise you a complete, total failure and collapse and extreme unhappiness. So that's not what I'm talking about. We need to accept that in his abundant wisdom, the Creator has created us individuals and with a measure of perfection. Now I sound like a Christian. Now, having accepted that and all the gifts that we have received and accepted, I think it is now the process of the application of those attributes. Let me call them attributes. And the key one for me is the attribute and capacity to cogitate, to think. To what extent are these questions that we asked at your instigation, Edith, conscious in your mind every time, all the time? Who am I? What am I doing? Where am I going? Where am I going with? If you allow yourself the opportunity to think and ask those questions, you don't have to find the answers today. And I think Atwoli is completely right. Even the purpose, even the goal that you're headed for can evolve over time as you grow older. What my purpose today is not what it was when I was 40. I'm older, one would hope wiser, slower, for sure. And my priorities are clearly different. So worry not that you evolve. In fact, there's a danger in being stuck because you can actually be stuck. That's my answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah. So
I have another one that as you answer that one on resources, kindly talk about the kid. Mohammed is asking, what would you tell that small kid about life? So please combine the two.
All right. I begin by talking about what resources are available to you as you try to figure out purpose, as you try to figure out your life. I think the first and the most fascinating resource that's around all of us are people. So the people we are around, we have the opportunity to live their lives vicariously and to learn their lessons by just observing what they do and listening to what they have been through. So that's a huge resource. And as you listen to these people and observe events and hear about things that happened, how you feel about that, you need to become aware about how you feel about situations like those and about situations that you encounter. That's a rich resource because it starts to help you to understand who you are, what you like, what you don't like, what you can withstand, what you cannot withstand. And that starts to frame answers to that question of what are you capable of achieving. And as you answer that question, then you start figuring from the pool of the things you are capable of achieving, what do you enjoy most? What gives you the most fulfillment? What helps the largest number of people, if you like? And so that drives you in the direction of becoming intentional. So I find that being intentional is a very important thing. And Frank alluded to it when he said, you have to develop this ability to cogitate, to think about things, but being intentional so that you don't feel like you're being driven by events to do things, but doing things because it makes sense to you and it has some meaning for you, and that you would do the same thing if you thought about it at another time under similar circumstances. So that is very important. And related to all those things I have said, finding a way to be helpful presents you with opportunities to learn new things and to discover more about yourself, even as you help other people. What would I tell that child when I am 100 or when I am 90 about purpose? The honest answer is that I don't know. And the honest answer is that as I go along in life, I pick components of the answers that I will give this child. And I would hope that at the moment that this child confronts me, I will have a convincing story that will make them feel that life was actually worth living at the time that I am living. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. Njenga, someone is
Yeah.
asking here, what would you say about living life like a traveler? Would you think that that fits the category of a purposeful, decent, and meaningful life? That's the first question. And the second one that I'd like you to answer is, what's the antidote of fear of acting on what you have thought out to be your purpose? How does one get courage? If you could answer those two questions.
Those are interesting questions. The first one is actually easy. The second one is not as easy. The Holy Book actually alludes to an answer to that question when we are told that when you're a child, you live as a child, when you are, and so on and so forth. We all know what that story is about. Because, and now I can speak with confidence as an old man, I have seen total failures in life by men in their 70s like me, spending a great deal of their time preparing to go to discotheques. Now, other than COVID and pneumonia of other sorts, the likelihood is that they'll fall and break a leg and get pulmonary embolism and die. But when you are 18, as we all were, and you're about to join university, if you don't go to out and be with your peers, then really in other words, the point that I'm making is that you travel, and I hope I understood the question, through life by entering different stages and doing those things that are age appropriate and specific. I mean, I have been asked, for example, by Wairoto, Dr. Jogona, Sylvia Kemunta, and all those people who are at the Chiromo Mentor at our building in Lavington. Why, Mzee, did you find it necessary in your old age, advanced old age, to build such a big and beautiful hospital? My answer is that because by the grace of God, I have had a reasonable life and I have done a lot of things in this life. I believe that the purpose for me now is to make sure that you, my sons and daughters, have a meaningful and purposeful life For the purpose, and Wairot will confirm this, Jogona will confirm this, Sylvia, all the people that I've been talking to recently, and I want you to pay me in kind. I want you to promise me that when you are my age, you will do the same to another person, to other persons, because it's by allowing future generations to be better than our current. I hope I'm answering your question, that really at different ages, you serve society and community in different ways. The second question you asked is, where does this courage come from? In the name of God, I have no idea.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Frank. Professor Lukoya Twoli, someone asked, how can those who have failed in their initial life goals reevaluate any plan, e.g. COVID and careers? And that's related to another one that was on the chat box that was saying, how do you deal with the depressive symptoms when your purpose doesn't seem to have turned out as well, for example, career-wise? If you could share with us your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So when we talk about purpose, I think there is a level at which sometimes people misunderstand purpose. Some people think that when you talk about purpose, it is cast in stone. That once you decide that this is my purpose, that's it. You have to walk down that road, no matter the roadblocks you find, no matter the people who are trying to stop you, no matter the troubles you go through, even if there are other roads that you could travel along, that this is the only road you must follow. That is not true. Purpose, as Frank has said, evolves over time. When you were 18, you had a purpose. When you were 20, when you were 30, you were thinking about a purpose of starting a family and getting children and whatever. When you're 40, your purpose, to other people looking at what you're doing, your purpose is different. So you can have core beliefs, core values, core goals for life that guide you. And even those can be fine-tuned as you go through life, as you get experiences and so on. But if at some point, some of the overt things you're doing in order to achieve your purpose become difficult, you have every right to reevaluate, to change direction, and to do other things, as long as they're in line with your values and they are still going to furthering the purpose that you're setting for yourself, what you think you are here on earth to achieve. So it is important for people to know that purpose is not a thing that you want to acquire, because if it were, then you'd acquire that thing and die. Purpose can be a journey, can be a set of things that you will do, a set of experiences that you will cause people to have in order for you to achieve fulfillment at the end of time. So if you failed, if you decided I want to be a psychiatrist, you went to medical school, you failed, it's not the end. It might be that you're going to medical school and interacting with people in medical school influenced how they see life, influenced how they interact with other people. It could be that you went to medical school in order for you to learn something from them and get out of medical school, go into another field and do something with the experiences that you have acquired. And that can become your purpose. So your purpose shouldn't necessarily be a signpost that is fixed, that I will get to that place and then I am done. So that would be a misunderstanding of purpose. If you start feeling this depression, despondency, because you are not achieving the things that you wanted to achieve in life, it might be that the things you're trying to achieve are misaligned to your purpose. They're misaligned to your values. And it is fair to reevaluate and find other things that are more aligned to your values. And this is where the ikigai that we started with comes in. Finding that place where you are doing things that benefit other people and things that are meaningful to you and bring you satisfaction, things that might put food on the table. And, so finding that sweet spot might be what you're actually looking for as you get frustrated about failure. So failure can be turned into free lessons. You're not paying tuition, but you are getting these experiences and you're learning something from them and you're turning them into opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Actually, I believe you answered one of the questions that one of our participants was asking, what are the views about life burnout? Is it ever too late? And you're saying, yes, you can sit down and reevaluate oneself. I think that's very important. We don't need to answer that question again. But for both of you, and I'd like to combine these two questions, is one, do you actually find purpose and meaning to your lives, or did purpose and meaning find you? We'll start with Dr. Frank Njenga. That's very interesting. Did purpose find you, or did you find purpose? That's very interesting. And is it about us intrinsically, or the circumstances we find ourselves in? Yeah, there are circumstances that make people maybe become purposeless or find life meaningless. And that question, how does capitalism influence our purpose in life? We can start with Dr. Frank, then Professor Lukoe to give insight to that.
Yeah, what you're asking, if I understand you correctly, is what comes first? Do you find purpose and then live, or do you live looking out for purpose? When Lukoe was talking, honestly, Lukoe, I thought you're talking about me. Because truly, one of the things, and now I'm going to be a little teeny weeny bit personal, which I shouldn't be. These are the things that really occupied and preoccupied me from the time I was a teenager. I actually started reading philosophy, both ancient and modern psychology, Kant, Descartes, and Russell, as a teenager, always trying to understand in why, first of all, where was he sitting, this God, when he decided to create this universe? And as he was creating it, what was his plan? What did he want to achieve? And where did he want it to go? And when he said, because I hear he said so, this is good, what did he mean by that? In other words, it's possible that there are some teenagers, young teenagers, who have a propensity not to question God, not to question parents, but with a propensity to allow their minds to float. And again, as we have said, Lukoe has said this very eloquently, life is about a lifelong search for meaning. If you find meaning at the age of 22, you're a bure fellow completely, because really you don't have the experience, you haven't seen enough. And it's actually a never-ending journey. So I think, and I said this is just to provoke discussion and conversation, it's a lifelong journey that allows you, encourages you, and permits you to ask all those many questions that Dr. Koba forced me to bring up again. Who am I? What is my purpose? Where am I going? Who am I going with? How will I know when I'm there? As long as those questions remain in your consciousness all the time, then you have a good chance of connecting with your purpose. If those questions do not exist in your consciousness, then it may be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, just to thank you, Frank, for framing like that. So does purpose find you, or do you find it? There's an old saying that I read about I think greatness, and it said something like this: that some are born with greatness, but there are those upon whom greatness is thrust, or something to that effect. I would argue that so it's like when we do research and we find that there's an association between this factor and this other factor, and we can't tell the temporal association, which came first. And my argument is that at the end of the day, perhaps it doesn't matter. What matters is that you found purpose, or it found you, but you have purpose. That to me is what matters. So as Frank says, at the age of 14 or 15, I paused at some point in my life and I said, what is this all about? And I had plenty of time because I used to live on a farm in Limuru alone, and I used to commute to high school, Jamhuri High School, a few kilometers down the road. And over the weekend, I'd be alone on that huge farm, sitting, listening to birds and the water flowing, and asking myself, so is this all there is? Or what is this all about? And that is when the questioning began. And there are many people who have the same disposition of questioning from an early age. But there are those who do not have the disposition to question as much. But then they will go through life and experience things and see things, and they get buffeted left, right, and center until they reach a place and they're like, aha, this is why I'm here. And this is what I'll be doing for the rest of my life. If I found both of them at the age of 70, they will both have purpose. And it will not matter that this one found purpose at a very young age, and this one was found by purpose when he was 50 and changed his entire life and started doing things differently. What matters is that eventually you have a purpose for your life. And it is a very personal meaning, as somebody said. It's not a meaning that Edith will look at someone and say, aha, this guy has arrived. No, it is a realization that is very internal to you, very personal to you. It's like a light bulb going off and saying, this is why I have been here all along. And then deciding that that is the path that you will follow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to know that it's never too late to find purpose. And I think that gives hope. And I would like to appreciate Professor Gakinya for reminding us that the bottom line seems to be concept of Ubuntu, I am because you are. As you two have well expounded on it without thinking of others, you might as well have no purpose. No wonder a lot of people are lifetime failures because they care less about other concepts. Thank you, Professor Kenya, for reminding us that's true. And then I think Dr. Njenga alluded to that once you get the millions as you're looking for, you need to give some away. I think he listed it on his last slide. I know time, we don't have much time, but there are two questions that I want to combine to hear from our two presenters before we close. And I have seen Dr. Catherine Mutisia requesting that we also get some comments from a senior psychiatrist who is a female. And I would like to say that we are going to have this another session, so it's not too late. We may have an opportunity right now to discuss especially issues of children coming in and out of the nest, but we surely will arrange for this. And I'd like to ask Dr. Njenga and Professor Flang to comment on two last questions before we close. One is, what is the antidote of fear? Acting on what you have thought out to be your purpose, how do you get courage? And the last question is, knowing about what you know about life now, what advice would you give your younger self? And of course, all of us who are probably younger and haven't found purpose yet. Dr. Njenga, then Prof.
Okay, I'll answer the last question, and Lukoya can answer the first one because it's harder. You know, I mean, I'm ashamed, completely ashamed to say that if I was given a second chance to go back to the age of 21 and live my life again, I'd follow the same path. And I'm completely ashamed because I am often accused by my enemies, happily, who are very few, and becoming fewer by the day, thankfully, of being a quasi-elitist in this. But truly, I mean, my advice to me at 21 would be, mzee, no, kijana, just follow your dreams, and your dreams are really valid, and just keep going. I mean, just go ahead, and it's possible, and you can get there. I'm sorry, I'd like to be fashionable and say that, oh, I should have. I'm too old to start telling lies and waffling. It's. I'm sorry I said that, but that's just the way it is. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, and just picking up from the last question, I would tell you, Edith, that I do not consider myself to be in a position where I can provide any meaningful advice to a young person, probably even aspiring to follow the same path I have. I still have a long way to learn. I still have much to experience before I can sit down and say, these are life's lessons, this is finding purpose. So I'm not particularly qualified to answer that question, except to just say one thing, that if I were to tell myself something at the age of 14, 15, I would go back and say, continue being intentional. So being intentional for me has been an eye-opener because I don't enter experiences blindly. I enter experiences with the intention of learning something from it and of contributing something in that particular situation. So being intentional helps me in order that I don't regret later. If I have done something and it didn't go right, I would say, oh, so that's an opportunity for me to learn because I was intentional. What is the antidote for fear when you're acting on your purpose? And how do you get the courage? So if you're doing something that you really believe in and you're doing something that you really feel is right and that is contributing a great deal, you often don't think about possibilities of harm to yourself. You often don't. So what people call courage might even be foolishness. What people call courage might be being foolhardy and just doing things because it is the right thing to do and it is the thing that will give me fulfillment. And other people who do not think the way you're thinking will name it courage. But if you go to even the person you think is the bravest person on earth, who has, faced the biggest dangers, and you ask them, how did you feel before you went in? They might answer, I didn't think about it. It was the only thing available for me to do, and I did it. So it's not necessarily courage. It is just conviction and feeling that this is the right thing to do and then doing it anyway. If you spend too much time thinking about, okay, I need courage, I need strength to do this, then often you will not do it. And often it is probably not something you are fully convinced you should be doing.
Thank you very much, Prof. Wow. I'm thinking we needed 5 hours or so to discuss this topic. Unfortunately, in the interest of time, we hope that we can continue this discussion in the course of the year. Thank you very much, Dr. Frank Njenga. Thank you, Professor Lukoya Twoli, for these awesome discussions. There's a gentleman here called Mufi who is old and is wishing that he could actually have an interaction with you independently. And maybe I don't know, I hope you can allow us to get him either an email address to link with you. He says he needs 80 CSOs and he thinks there will be room for collaboration. Thank you everyone who sent some chat and said they were really encouraged by the discussion. We really appreciate, and we hope that this has been a great way of starting the year. And I wish we could even start, we could have that slide by Dr. Frank Njenga, the one that
you can send them out. We'll send the slides to you, Edith. Grace will send them to you, and you can do what you like with them. That is Mzee's purpose.
Asante sana. And I hope that all of us are asking ourselves, where are you going? What do you need to get there? He said you need people at one point. And how will you know that you get there? Very important questions that 1 year later I'm still asking myself, and I'm hoping that continuously I'll keep answering that, and that purpose will not find me at 80 years of age. So we really appreciate everyone. And for the KPA members, we want to say that we've started, and our plan is that every month we'll have a discussion, and we hope to keep mixing between what helps us as human beings and also what helps us in the practice of psychiatry, so that we are not just getting better at prescription in terms of understanding psychopharmacology, but we are also getting better as persons. And that way we are able to grow in terms of education, in terms of research and mentorship. And we greatly appreciate our speakers for starting us off. I know that Dr. Wairoto is with us, and he had an announcement. Dr. Wairoto, are you there to make the announcement you wanted to make?
Oh, thank you so much, Edith. Thank you so much, Dr. Njenga and Prof. Twoli, for wonderful presentations. So the announcement for KPA would like to request members to send their photos and their office locations or where they work to the KPA admin. So remember, our email address is kpa.psychiatrist@gmail.com. We want to put all that information on our website. So in case you need to look for a colleague or someone to assist you in any part of Kenya, it is easy for you to reach out. And it's also a good way of us marketing you, our psychiatrists and our consultants on our website. So kindly send your email address, your photo, and your office location or where you work. Thank you so much. Back to you, Edith. Santi.
Thank you very much, our secretary. And for all of us who registered, I'd like to inform you that this is the CPD points will be sent to your email address by the KPA office. And we hope that we'll do that in the shortest time possible. And in case you don't get them, you could reach out to you could send an email to the KPA email, and we will respond to you as soon as possible. So we wish ourselves well in the new year, and we look forward to this interaction. It's been awesome. Very many people joined this meeting, and we look forward to even more people joining as we go along. Thank you, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, Dr. Koba.
Yes, here I am.
Could you please share with me your email address in the chat? Grace Kashanja here.
Yes, I will. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.